It was just another chilly Tuesday morning at a cozy little cafe nestled in the heart of downtown Georgia. The early light filtered softly through the windows, bouncing off steam rising from mugs of coffee. The scent of fresh espresso, buttered toast, and sizzling bacon wrapped around the room like a warm blanket. Outside, the streets bustled quietly, people heading to work, bundled up in coats, their breath fogging in the crisp winter air. Inside, Lisa moved between tables with practiced grace. At 28, she wasn't just a waitress, she was the heart of the cafe. Her ponytail bounced with every step, and her smile seemed to warm up even the coldest morning. Lisa had been working here for almost 2 years. She knew most of the regulars by name, their orders by heart, and their stories like old friends. But that morning was different. As she wiped down a booth near the window, the door creaked open, letting in a sharp gust of wind, and a stranger. He walked in slowly, almost cautiously. His shoulders slumped beneath a worn-out army green coat that looked several sizes too big. His boots were scuffed and muddy. A tattered backpack hung from one shoulder, and he seemed to carry the weight of something far heavier than just his belongings. Lisa noticed him right away. He didn't head to the counter. He didn't greet anyone. He simply scanned the room, eyes tired, and quietly sat down in the farthest booth, the one in the corner where the light was softest. He picked up a menu but didn't open it. Just held it there, staring blankly at the table. Lisa watched for a moment, then approached with gentle steps. "Hi there," she said softly, her notepad in hand. "Can I get you something to eat or drink?" The man looked up, startled. His voice was hoarse, like it hadn't been used much lately. "I'm just resting," he replied, his eyes flicking away. "I don't have any money." Lisa hesitated, then smiled kindly. "That's okay," she said. "You're welcome to sit as long as you like." She turned to walk away, but something tugged at her heart. She glanced back and noticed the small patch on his fraying backpack. It was faint, but unmistakable, a military emblem. U.S. Army. That symbol meant something to Lisa. Her father had served, and she had grown up hearing stories of honor, sacrifice, and brotherhood. Without saying another word, Lisa headed to the kitchen. She pulled out her own wallet, the one she kept tucked inside her apron, and handed $12 to the cook. "Eggs, toast, bacon, and a large coffee," she said. "Table 6. Make it hot, and make it fast." The cook raised an eyebrow. "He didn't order anything." "I know," Lisa replied. "It's a thank you." A few minutes later, she returned to the booth with a steaming plate and a tall mug. She placed them gently in front of him. He looked up, confused. "I didn't." She interrupted with a warm smile. "This one's on the house. Thank you for your service." For a moment, he said nothing. His lips quivered, and he looked down at the plate, then back at her. His eyes began to shine, not from the reflection of the morning light, but from the quiet storm of emotion rising behind them. "I haven't had a hot meal in 2 days," he said, his voice cracking. Lisa placed a hand gently on the table. "Well, you're having one now. Take your time." He nodded, speechless. She walked away, not seeking thanks or praise, just happy to help. To her, it was no big deal. Just one small act of kindness in a world that often forgets to stop and care. But to the man in the corner booth, it meant everything. As he took his first bite, savoring every bit of warmth and flavor, he looked around that little cafe, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel invisible. Someone had seen him. Someone had cared. That small, quiet moment, between a stranger and a waitress, would soon become the spark of a story that traveled farther than either of them could have imagined. And Lisa, she had no idea that her simple, selfless gesture was about to change the course of her life forever. Lisa thought nothing of it. To her, it was simple: a man was hungry, a veteran no less, and she had the means to help. No second-guessing. No hesitation. She'd done what her heart told her was right. And in the whirlwind of a busy cafe shift, she quickly moved on to cleaning tables, refilling coffees, and chatting with the regulars, thinking no more of the quiet man in the corner who was now sipping his coffee with a grateful smile. But behind the counter, someone had noticed. And that someone was not smiling. About an hour later, after the morning rush had slowed and the last of the breakfast crowd trickled out, Lisa heard her name called over the kitchen intercom. Lisa, manager's office. She wiped her hands on a towel and made her way to the back, a little confused but not concerned. She had no idea what was coming. The office door was already open. Her manager, Greg, a tall man in his mid-40s with slicked back hair and a face that rarely showed emotion, sat behind his desk. In front of him, a receipt was laid out. He didn't ask her to sit. Instead, he pointed to the slip of paper. "You gave away food without authorization," he said, his voice sharp and cold. "Eggs, toast, bacon, and coffee. Table 6. Lisa blinked. "Oh, yes. I paid for it myself." The man didn't have money, and he looked like he hadn't eaten in days. "He's a veteran." Greg cut her off. "Company policy doesn't allow free meals. Even if you pay for them out of your own pocket, you're not allowed to give anything away without management approval." Lisa felt her cheeks flush. "But I did pay for it. It didn't cost the cafe anything." Greg's expression didn't change. "That's not the point. You made a decision you weren't authorized to make. You broke policy." There was a long silence. Lisa stared at him, waiting for the tension to ease, for the cold exterior to soften, for him to say something that made sense. But it didn't come. "I'm sorry, Lisa," he said, almost mechanically. "We're going to have to let you go." The words hit her like a punch to the chest. "Wait, you're firing me?" she asked, her voice cracking. Greg nodded once. "It's out of my hands." Lisa's heart pounded. It was one meal. For someone who served our country. How can that be wrong? He didn't respond. He didn't have to. In his world, rules were rules. No exceptions. Lisa turned, silent, stunned. Her hands shook as she grabbed her jacket from the hook, her apron from the chair. She walked out of the office with her eyes fixed ahead, refusing to let Greg see the tears that were already forming. The other servers looked up as she emerged, their conversations faltering. They saw the look on her face, pale, shocked, wounded, and they knew. She'd been fired. Some gasped. One of them muttered, "Are you serious?" But Lisa didn't stop. She walked past them, past the kitchen, past the corner booth where just an hour ago she'd done something kind, something good. And stepped out into the cold morning air. Outside, the wind bit at her cheeks, but she barely noticed. She just stood there, on the sidewalk, coat unzipped, staring into the distance. Fired. For showing compassion. It didn't make sense. The man she helped, he had served in a war. He had put his life on the line. He hadn't asked for anything. And she hadn't even thought twice. She'd just done what any decent human being would do. Now, she was jobless. Humiliated. Heartbroken. But beneath the swirl of emotions, there was something stronger brewing, something steadier. Conviction. Lisa wiped the tears from her face and took a deep breath. She wasn't going to regret what she did. If she had to do it all over again, she'd do it in a heartbeat. Because no company policy, no cold manager, no printed rulebook could ever convince her that helping a hungry man was wrong. Still, as she walked down the street, clutching her bag to her chest, she couldn't help but wonder what would come next. Unemployed, uncertain, and hurt, she felt lost. But little did she know, the quiet decision she made in that corner booth had already begun to ripple far beyond that cafe's walls. Because kindness, real, genuine kindness, doesn't go unnoticed. And Lisa's story was about to travel farther than she ever imagined. That evening, as the cafe lights dimmed and chairs were stacked for closing, Lisa sat in her small apartment, still in disbelief over how her day had unraveled. She sipped tea with shaky hands, replaying the manager's words over and over in her mind, "You're fired." All for buying breakfast for a hungry veteran. She didn't cry anymore, not because it didn't hurt, but because the shock had taken over. It was like being caught in a storm with no idea which way was forward. But while Lisa sat in silence, someone else was speaking up for her, loudly. At that very cafe, another customer, a woman named Maria, had witnessed everything. She had been sitting just a few tables away when Lisa approached the man in the corner booth. She watched Lisa pay for the meal, smile warmly, and walk away without expecting thanks. And she had also seen the manager call Lisa to the back, and then watched her walk out of the cafe an hour later, her face pale, eyes glistening. Maria had taken a photo earlier that morning, just a simple, candid picture of Lisa wiping down a table with her usual sunny demeanor. She hadn't planned to use it for anything. But now, with anger in her chest and admiration in her heart, she posted it on Facebook with a caption that would set the internet on fire. "Today, I saw a waitress do something that reminded me there's still kindness in the world. A homeless veteran came in, and she paid for his breakfast out of her own pocket. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her manager fired her on the spot for it. Her name is Lisa. If anyone knows her, she deserves better than that." She attached the photo of Lisa, apron tied around her waist, mid-smile. She closed her phone, not expecting much. But the internet had other plans. Within hours, the post began gaining traction. Dozens of shares turned into hundreds. Then into thousands. By the time the sun rose the next day, it had been shared over 50,000 times. Major veteran pages reposted it. Influencers, activists, and celebrities began commenting, tagging one another. Veterans from across the country flooded the comments. "She didn't serve, but she served me. She's a hero. That waitress did more for that man than most people would. She shouldn't be punished, she should be celebrated. Where is she? I want to offer her a job at my company." Job offers poured in from all corners of the country. Non-profits, restaurants, coffee shops, and even media outlets reached out. One restaurant chain run by veterans publicly offered her a management position. Lisa's phone buzzed non-stop. She didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or scream. Her social media inbox overflowed. Strangers sent messages of support. Some even sent money, hoping to help her through what they assumed must be a difficult financial moment. But the most unexpected response came the next morning, from 4 men in uniform. The cafe opened at 7 a.m. sharp, like it always did. The same manager, the one who had fired Lisa, stood behind the counter, checking receipts and prepping for the day. He was completely unaware of the digital storm brewing outside his quiet little establishment. Until the front door swung open. The bell above the door jingled, but this time, it wasn't a sleepy customer or a college student grabbing coffee. It was 4 U.S. Marines. In full dress blues. The entire cafe fell silent. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. A spoon clinked into a coffee mug. Even the kitchen staff peeked out from behind the line. The lead Marine, tall and broad-shouldered with a presence that filled the room, walked calmly up to the counter. "Are you the manager?" he asked. The man behind the counter cleared his throat. "Yes. Can I help you?" The Marine nodded once. "We heard about what happened here yesterday. About a waitress named Lisa. The one you fired for feeding a hungry veteran." There was a pause. The manager glanced around nervously. I was just following policy. The Marine held up a folded American flag and placed it gently on the counter. Lisa showed more honor and loyalty to one of our brothers than some people show in a lifetime, he said. We're here on behalf of every Marine, soldier, and veteran she stood up for. She fed one of ours when no one else would. And for that, she has our respect. Gasps and quiet applause began to fill the room. A few customers stood, visibly moved. One woman dabbed her eyes with a napkin. The Marine continued, "We don't just want to thank her, we want to help her. If you know where she is, we'd like to speak with her. She deserves better than this place." And with that, the Marines turned and walked out, leaving the cafe in stunned silence. Lisa's story had started with a meal. But now, it was becoming a movement. And the world was just starting to notice. The cafe was unusually quiet that morning. The usual soft jazz playing over the speakers felt almost muted, and the scent of coffee and toast floated gently through the air, barely noticed by the half-dozen early customers sitting scattered across tables. Behind the counter stood Greg, the manager. He moved with his usual stiff efficiency, checking inventory and sipping his morning espresso. But his thoughts were restless. Ever since Lisa's firing the day before, something had felt off. Staff were unusually quiet. Some had barely spoken to him at all. A couple of the younger servers had even looked at him with disgust. He tried to ignore it, reassuring himself that he'd simply followed company policy. Rules are rules, he told himself. That's when the door opened. The bell above the entrance gave its usual cheery chime, but the sound seemed to echo louder than usual. Heads turned. In walked four tall, broad-shouldered men, dressed in full Marine Corps dress blues. The crimson stripes down their dark trousers, the polished medals on their chests, the gold buttons glinting under the morning light, they stood with unmistakable dignity. Every eye in the cafe turned toward them. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Forks paused halfway to mouths. They weren't there for breakfast. The leader of the group, a rugged man with silvering hair at his temples and an air of quiet authority, stepped forward. He looked directly at the man behind the counter. "Is this where Lisa used to work?" Greg's face went pale. His mouth opened slightly, but he simply nodded. The Marine gave a tight, professional nod in return. Then, taking a few steps closer, he spoke again. His voice was calm, steady, but it carried weight, the kind that silenced a room without needing to shout. "We heard about what happened here," he said. "About how you fired her." Greg swallowed. She gave away food without permission. It was against policy." The Marine's eyes didn't waver. "She gave food to a hungry veteran. Paid for it herself. Showed compassion when no one else did. And you fired her for it?" Greg shifted uncomfortably. "That's not the full story." But the Marines weren't there to debate. Without another word, the Marine reached into a ceremonial case and pulled out a carefully folded American flag. He placed it on the counter with reverence, his gloved hands moving with practiced precision. "She honored one of our own," he said, his voice firm. "When you turned your back, she stepped up. She didn't ask for anything. Didn't do it for recognition. She just did the right thing. On behalf of every man and woman who's ever worn this uniform, we honor her." The weight of those words settled over the cafe like a blanket. A few customers clapped quietly. One elderly man placed his hand over his heart. A server standing near the espresso machine wiped a tear from her cheek. The Marine turned and faced the room, raising his voice just slightly, enough for everyone to hear. "If any of you know where Lisa is," he said, "we'd like to find her. We came here today to offer her something better. A job, a future, something worthy of the person she's proven herself to be. She's the kind of person we'd be proud to stand with." He paused, scanning the room. "Because what she did? That wasn't just a good deed. That was leadership. That was honor. That was what we fight for. The room remained silent, but the energy had changed. Something had shifted. The once ordinary cafe now felt like hallowed ground, if only for a moment. The Marines gave a respectful nod, turned on their heels, and walked out, their boots clicking sharply against the tile floor. As the door swung closed behind them, the tiny bell gave one last jingle. Silence. Then, a few scattered claps. Then more. Until the entire cafe, servers, customers, even a delivery guy at the door, erupted into spontaneous applause. Greg stood frozen behind the counter, flag still sitting where it had been placed, his face blank. Out on the street, the Marines climbed into a black SUV and drove off, not as part of a publicity stunt, not for a viral moment, but because they meant it. Because they believed in people like Lisa. Because she had done something most wouldn't, she had acted when it counted. And now, her kindness was echoing far beyond the walls of that cafe. Later that week, Lisa sat in a news studio for the very first time in her life. The bright lights above the cameras were almost blinding, and the makeup artist had just finished dabbing her cheeks. She fidgeted nervously with her hands, unsure of what to expect. All she knew was that someone had seen the viral Facebook post and contacted her for a local morning news segment. As the countdown to live airtime began, 3, 2, 1, Lisa took a deep breath. The anchor smiled warmly. Today, we're joined by Lisa Thompson, the former cafe worker who made headlines this week for doing something many of us would like to believe we'd do ourselves. Lisa, thank you for being here. Lisa gave a modest smile. Her voice was soft, a little shaky at first, but carried strength and sincerity. I didn't think I was doing anything special, she said. I just saw someone who needed help. That's all. The host leaned forward. But you were fired for that act of kindness. What went through your mind in that moment? Lisa paused, her eyes drifting slightly as she recalled the scene. I was shocked. And honestly, I was hurt. I didn't expect to lose my job over something so simple. But at the same time, I don't regret it. If I had the chance to do it again, I would. Every time. The clip aired live across the state. But by that afternoon, it was clipped, shared, and posted across multiple social media platforms. People resonated deeply with her humility and courage. Within hours, national media outlets picked it up. Soon, Lisa's story wasn't just a local feel-good piece, it was a nationwide headline. Waitress fired for feeding a homeless veteran. Acts of kindness versus corporate policy, where do we draw the line? From cafe to courage, meet Lisa, the woman who fed a veteran and lost her job, but gained a nation's heart. The story inspired millions. Strangers from all walks of life reached out. Parents, students, former military members, non-profit leaders, and business owners. Letters arrived. Emails poured in. Her inbox was flooded with messages of support and encouragement. Veterans especially connected with her story. One Vietnam veteran wrote, "I've walked into places where people looked right through me. Lisa saw that man. She saw all of us." Over the next few days, Lisa received more than 20 job offers. Some came from local diners and restaurants who wanted her on their team. Others came from national cafe chains eager to attach themselves to her story. But the ones that meant the most were the offers from veteran-owned businesses. One cafe, run entirely by retired U.S. Marines, reached out with a heartfelt letter. "We don't just want to offer you a job. We want to invest in who you are. You've already shown the leadership, compassion, and heart that we value. Along with the position, we'd also like to offer you a scholarship to finish your college degree, on us." Lisa cried when she read that letter. It was more than a job. It was a second chance, one she never expected, but so deeply appreciated. She accepted the offer and moved across town to start at a small diner known not just for its food, but for its family atmosphere. It was a place where the staff greeted every customer by name, where giving someone a warm meal didn't require permission, just heart. Lisa flourished there. But she didn't stop with just a new job. With the help of the Marines who had walked into her old cafe and some generous donors who were moved by her story, Lisa launched a small foundation called Lisa's Table. Its mission was simple: to make sure no homeless veteran ever goes hungry again. Every week, Lisa and her volunteers set up stations in public parks, underpasses, and shelters, handing out hot meals, no questions asked. What started as one act of kindness became a growing movement. The same veteran Lisa had helped that day, whose name was Robert, later showed up at one of the food drives. Cleaned up, sober, and smiling. He gave her a hug and whispered, "You saved me, Lisa. You reminded me I still mattered."